There is a feeling that lingers between the lines of every conversation, every glance, every silence. A feeling that neither of you dares to name, but both of you feel deeply. That's the fact. That's the line drawn in the sand. But there's something else, something unnamed, something unexplainable, that pulls him toward you in ways he cannot logically defend. You never asked for this. You didn't plan it. You didn't try to make it happen. But here it is, real, raw, confusing. When he looks at you, it's different. It's not the look of a man politely acknowledging another woman. It's the look of someone who sees you and remembers something. Not a memory, but a recognition. A soul echo, something he forgot he was looking for. In his presence, you say little, but everything between you is loud. Loud in the way energy moves. Loud in how time seems to pause when you're near. And you see it in his struggle, too. The way he holds back. The way he silences the words before they ever reach his lips. The way he avoids staying too long, and yet always seems to return. It's not physical proximity he craves. It's emotional resonance. Carl Jung once said that people don't meet by accident. They cross paths because there is something unresolved, something deeply archetypal, playing out in the field between two souls. And maybe that's what's happening here. Not a forbidden romance, not a reckless temptation, but a psychic pull, a reminder from the unconscious that the life he's living may not be the life his soul longs for. You are not a temptation, you are a mirror. And what he sees in you is not just your beauty, your softness, your mind. He sees what he has silenced in himself. He sees passion. He sees presence. He sees a kind of aliveness that he doesn't know how to touch anymore. With you, he feels witnessed, not just seen, but felt. And in the quiet space between words, he finds himself questioning everything he once assumed was enough. But you're not asking for anything. You're not trying to pull him away. You're simply being. And that's what unnerves him most. Because you are not demanding. You are not chasing. You are not seducing. You are just standing in your truth. And it is that truth that disrupts the lie he's been living. He tells himself he's happy, that he made the right choice, that his life is fine. But with you, fine isn't enough, because you awaken something true, something ancient, something that his rational mind cannot tame. Jung spoke about the anima, the feminine image in the male unconscious, and how it plays out in a man's life. How often he projects it onto a woman who embodies what he's missing within himself. That may be you. You may not just be a person to him. You may be a symbol of his own neglected soul. The part of him that longs to feel deeply, live honestly, love fearlessly. The part he buried beneath roles, expectations, responsibility. And so, his yearning for you isn't just about you. It's about him. About the parts of himself that have been asleep for too long. And now, every time he sees you, they stir. Not because he wants to betray someone else, but because he realizes he's betrayed himself by settling for a life that fits, but doesn't fulfill. He wants you, but not in a way he can reduce to desire. It's not lust, it's not fantasy, it's something more unsettling, more sacred. It's the whisper of, what if? What if he had met you first? What if he had chosen differently? What if life had another path? But he doesn't say these things, not out loud. Instead, he says them through glances, through the hesitation in his steps, through the way he lingers in your presence just a moment too long, through the silence that speaks more than words ever could. And you feel it too. You sense the ache. You sense the conflict. You sense the longing wrapped in restraint. You didn't choose to be this woman, but here you are, aware, awake, empathic. You don't shame him. You don't lead him on. You just hold space for what is, even if it can never be acted upon. Because deep connection doesn't always ask for touch. Sometimes it asks for truth. Sometimes it asks for stillness. Sometimes it asks for the strength to feel everything and still walk away with dignity. You may not be his wife, but you are his truth. The truth he doesn't speak. The truth that lives in the quiet hours of his thoughts. The truth that shows up in dreams he doesn't tell anyone about. The truth that terrifies him because it demands something his current life cannot give. And you carry that truth with grace. Not because it's easy, but because you understand the sacredness of timing, the weight of responsibility, and the reality of choice. You don't need to possess him. You don't need to be validated by him. You know who you are. And in that knowing, you allow him to see himself. Even if just for a moment. There are men who find comfort in routine, in predictability, in the safety of what they've always known. But then, there are moments when a man meets someone who awakens his soul. And in that awakening, everything begins to shake, not to destroy, but to reveal he's married. That's his reality. But he wants you in a way that defies language. Not because you're an escape, but because you are an invitation to remember, to feel, to confront, to choose. And whether he ever says it or not, you'll always be the one who made him question the life he settled for. You'll be the echo in his chest he can't explain, the calm in his chaos, the pause in his autopilot, the flicker of something true in a life that no longer feels real. And even if you never share a kiss, a life, a future, you will remain a sacred memory, a turning point, a moment of soul recognition. You are not the other woman, you are the awakening, the mirror, the untamed truth he never saw coming. And maybe that's what makes it all the more powerful. The fact that nothing happened, yet everything did. There were no grand declarations, no stolen nights, no promises made in secret. But beneath the surface, something enormous unfolded, something irreversible. Because once a man has glimpsed the version of himself that exists in your presence, the man who feels alive, who feels understood, who feels seen, he can't unknow it. He might try to forget. He might try to bury it beneath obligations, behind routines, under the weight of what is right, but it lives in him now, quietly, persistently, a truth he cannot fully explain or erase. There's a sacred kind of ache in this connection. It's not toxic. It's not selfish. It's not rooted in ego or conquest. It's tender. It's existential. It's soul level. And that's why it's so hard to ignore. Because you're not just a person he's attracted to. You are a mirror to a part of his essence that's been waiting to be remembered. Carl Jung wrote about how the things we repress do not vanish. They live in the shadow and influence us from the dark. And sometimes what we repress isn't just anger or fear. Sometimes it's desire, it's longing. It's the innocent, aching wish for something real, for something that makes us feel whole again. You didn't awaken something destructive in him. You awakened something honest, something deeply human. And for a man who has lived by expectations, who has done all the right things, who's kept everything in order, this kind of emotional earthquake feels dangerous. It threatens the scaffolding of the life he's built, but it also shows him what life could be if he allowed himself to live more truthfully. And that tension, it stays with him every day. Every time he sees you, and every time he doesn't see you. You're the thought that finds him in quiet moments. The memory that colors his dreams. The energy he can't cleanse from his chest. And it's not because you tried to imprint yourself there. It's because you were already there. Before he met you, he was already searching for you. Not your name, not your face, but the feeling, the emotional safety, the intuitive depth, the soul connection. And when he found it, he knew, even if he couldn't say it, even if he would never act on it, he knew he might go on with his life. He might stay married. He might convince himself that he can compartmentalize this experience. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. It doesn't knock loudly. It whispers. It shows up in subtle ways. In the dissatisfaction he can't explain. In the sudden sense of emptiness after a conversation. In the way nothing feels quite as alive as the moment he stood next to you. And maybe you feel it too. Not in a needy way. Not in a possessive way. But in the quiet knowing that what you shared was real. That it meant something, even if it was never named. You don't need him to confess it. You don't need him to choose you. You don't need a love story to prove it happened. Because the connection was the story. The moment itself was enough to shift everything. There's a kind of love that transcends logic. A kind of draw that isn't about compatibility or timing or even decision. It's just there, deep, invisible, undeniable. And while some people run from that kind of intensity, others carry it with reverence, knowing that even unfulfilled connections can be sacred. Even silence can speak volumes. Even distance can be intimate. He wants you, but not in a way he can say. He wants you in a way that makes his hands tremble when he's near you, in a way that makes him question his entire emotional compass, in a way that makes him both grateful and terrified. Because if this is what real feels like, then what has the rest of his life been? And maybe he'll never know what to do with it. Maybe he'll never have the courage to face it. But the imprint is permanent. You've altered his sense of reality. You've touched something so deep in him that now everything else feels slightly out of tune. That's not your fault. It's not your responsibility to fix. You weren't a test. You were a mirror, a moment of awakening. And sometimes, that's all we're meant to be for someone. But let's be honest, it hurts. to feel this much and have nowhere to place it. To know something profound has passed between you, and yet to have no name for it, no form for it, no future for it. It leaves you suspended in a strange kind of grief for something beautiful that never fully got to live. And yet, would you really trade it, that feeling, that clarity, that knowing that you can stir something this deep in another soul without ever crossing a line? That's power. That's impact. That's what Jung would call an archetypal connection, a pattern older than your storylines, deeper than your rational thoughts. The kind of connection that reminds both of you that you are more than roles, you are more than agreements, you are souls searching. Remembering, longing to feel home again, and maybe you were that moment of home. Maybe that's all it needed to be, or maybe it's not over. Maybe one day life rearranges itself. Maybe timing changes, maybe clarity grows, but even if it doesn't, even if all you ever share is this unspoken understanding, you know it was real, you know you were seen, and you know he will never forget you, because you weren't just a woman, you were the woman who showed him the depth of his own unlived truth. And so he walks through his days carrying a weight he cannot describe. It's not guilt exactly, because he hasn't betrayed anyone. It's not regret either, because nothing happened that can be undone. It's something far more complicated, an ache that lives in the background of his life, like music playing in another room. Always there, always calling. A quiet knowing that somewhere out in the world you exist. And, he doesn't speak of you, not to his friends, not even to himself in words he can admit. But he feels you in his chest when he's driving alone, when he lies beside his wife and wonders why the quiet between them feels colder now, when he catches a scent or hears a tone in someone's voice that brings you to mind. You are there, woven into the quiet corners of his experience. And not like a distraction, but like a compass that points to something deeper he's afraid to follow. He might try to convince himself it was a phase, just a passing feeling, a moment of confusion. But something in him knows better. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an accident. It was a message from the deeper parts of his psyche. A calling from the part of himself he thought he had lost or never fully known. And that's what unsettles him most, that you didn't just stir desire. You stirred truth, a forgotten language of connection that doesn't need touch, but needs honesty. In your eyes, he saw what he hadn't realized he was starving for. Presence, emotional depth, understanding that doesn't need to be earned. And he knows, even if he never says it, that what he felt with you was real. Not dramatic, not wild, not desperate, but unmistakably real. A moment of feeling truly known, not for what he does, not for who he's expected to be, but for who he is underneath it all. And for you, it hasn't been easy either. You carry the echo of him too. You feel the weight of what never fully unfolded. You know what it's like to stand in the middle of a fire and not be burned, to feel deeply and still hold boundaries. You didn't chase. You didn't demand. You didn't try to disrupt his life. You simply showed up, fully, truthfully, quietly. And in doing so, you became unforgettable. There's a strange kind of bravery in loving someone with your energy, with your presence, with your soul, without ever reaching for what isn't yours to hold. You loved him in silence, in restraint, in honor, not because you had to, but because you understood that some connections are too sacred to be possessed. They are meant to awaken, not to claim. Carl Jung would say that the soul often communicates through symbols, dreams, encounters. That what seems random is often deeply intentional at the unconscious level. And maybe that's what you were for each other, a message from the soul, a mirror reflecting the truth that neither of you knew you needed to see. A reminder that not everything that matters can be measured or named. He may go on pretending. He may stay exactly where he is, playing the role that everyone expects of him. But deep down, there will always be a flicker of you, a moment when he'll pause and feel the hollow space where your presence once stood. And in that moment, he'll remember how alive he felt when you were near. Not because you gave him anything, but because you reminded him of what he already carried and had long forgotten. This kind of connection doesn't fade. It might grow quiet. It might get buried under years and choices and the lives you both continue to live. But it will always be there, a heartbeat beneath the noise, a soft ache behind his eyes. A question he'll never fully answer. What if? And you will continue on your path, not waiting, not hoping, but honoring what you felt, honoring what it showed you about your own depth, your own capacity, your own truth. Because this wasn't just about him. This was about you too. About the way you showed up in your stillness. About the way you carried love without needing to hold it. About the way you saw someone so deeply without losing sight of yourself. You didn't need to be chosen to know your worth. You didn't need to be claimed to understand your value. You knew that your presence alone was a gift. That simply being in your energy was enough to change a man, to awaken something in him he could never unsee, and that's the kind of impact that lasts. Long after words have faded, long after time has passed, long after life has moved on, you'll always be the woman who held space for something real without needing to possess it. The one who touched his soul without ever touching his body. The one who reminded him that his heart was still alive, still capable, still longing for something more than duty or expectation. And maybe he'll never return. Maybe he'll never reach out. But you'll feel it. Every once in a while, like a breeze that brushes your skin. His energy, his memory, the echo of a love that existed beyond form. You'll feel it and smile. Not because you lost something, but because you felt something so rare, so honest, so soul-stirring that it changed how you understand connection. This is not a story of betrayal. It's not a tragedy. It's a sacred moment in time. A meeting between two souls who recognized each other in the brief stillness of a chaotic world. He was married. But he wanted you, not for escape, not for fantasy, but for truth, because with you, he remembered. And once the soul remembers, it never fully forgets. And so life moves forward as it always does. The world outside doesn't stop to honor silent truths. It doesn't pause for the ache that lingers in a man's chest when he sees the woman who reminds him of who he really is. There are schedules to keep, responsibilities to uphold, smiles to wear for appearances. And he does all of it. He plays his role well. But inside him, there's a quiet room where he keeps you, where the memory of your presence stays untouched, unspoiled, held like something sacred. Not because he's holding on to hope, but because letting go completely would mean turning away from the most alive version of himself he's ever known. He walks through his days speaking words that aren't fully his, making decisions that align with his obligations, and living in a rhythm that used to feel safe. Until you disrupted it. You didn't do anything destructive. You simply existed as you are. And in that pure being, he saw the contrast. The distance between what he has and what he deeply wants but cannot name aloud. You're not the woman who tried to steal him. You're not the one who chased a fantasy. You're the woman who stood in truth, unmoved, unwavering. And that truth revealed everything he had pushed beneath the surface. All the unlived parts, all the unspoken needs, all the forgotten dreams. Carl Jung believed that every relationship, no matter how brief or intense, serves as a mirror to the self. And some mirrors reflect our joy, others our wounds. But then there are the rare ones, the ones that reflect our potential. You were that mirror, not just a reflection of who he was, but of who he could be if he lived from the soul instead of the script. He didn't expect to meet someone who made him feel this much. Especially not now. Not after life had already been decided, paths already walked, choices already made. But your presence disrupted all of that. Not violently, not loudly, but with grace. And in that graceful disruption, he found himself unprepared. Because the truth is, most people don't live fully. They live safely. They do what they're supposed to. They love in ways that check boxes but don't set their hearts on fire. And maybe he told himself that was enough, until your presence revealed that enough isn't the same as true. That comfort isn't the same as connection. That safety isn't the same as soul. But what do you do when the thing your soul longs for doesn't fit into the life you've built? Most people silence that longing. They bury it. They convince themselves it was just a dream, just a moment, just a weakness. And maybe he tries to do the same. But you weren't just a moment, you were a shift, a remembrance. A presence so deeply felt it lingers in his breath, his bones, his very awareness. And you didn't ask him to change, you didn't demand he choose. You simply let him see. And that kind of truth is impossible to unsee. He might carry on, he might live quietly, respectfully, honorably. But inside, he knows you're the unfinished sentence. The unsung melody, the story that didn't get to unfold but changed the entire narrative anyway. And you carry him too. But not with desperation. Not with longing, with reverence. Because you understand now what most people never learn. Some love is meant to wake you up, not to stay. Some connections are too big for the shape of this world. And the most courageous thing you can do is love someone silently, completely, and let them go without ever needing them to hold you back. Jung would say that what is unconscious will always find a way to surface, that when something stirs the depths of your being, it's not random. It's meaningful. And what the two of you shared wasn't ordinary. It wasn't even explainable. It was archetypal. It was the dance of animate and animus, the meeting of opposites, the divine spark of something ancient remembering itself in modern form. He might never say it, but he loved you. Not with the simplicity of fairy tales, but with the depth of a man who met his truth and trembled before it. He loved you in glances, in pauses, in the way his voice changed when he said your name in his mind. He loved you in the way he protected your space, even from himself, in the way he carried your energy with him long after you'd gone. And you loved him too. Not with expectation, but with presence, not with demands, but with stillness. You loved him with the kind of grace that leaves no scar, only a blessing. The kind that frees both of you, even as it leaves a soft H behind. You'll both move on, maybe. You'll live the lives that were already in motion. You'll make memories, raise children, build things that matter. But there will always be that one moment, that soul-sized moment when time slowed down and the truth rose up and everything made sense for just a second. He will always remember the woman who didn't need to own him to change him. The woman who didn't need to speak to be heard. The woman whose silence echoed in the halls of his heart louder than anyone else's love ever did.